Hey everyone, welcome to the Thunk Tank Podcast. Larry David might be upset with me saying this, but Happy New Year. Happy 2020. For our first episode, big spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about the new Star Wars movie, The Rise of Skywalker. So if you haven't seen it, obviously we talk about details. And spoiler alert for this podcast episode, we did not like the movie. We basically thought it was garbage, so we mostly rip on it. Yeah, there were a few good things. The music was pretty killing, but the storytelling was garbage. That's. I'll leave it there. If you want to support the podcast, consider going over to patreon.com/thunktankpodcast, and you can donate as little as $1 an episode. Other than that, I'll leave this intro really short. Get into the Star Wars. We got lots of cool episodes coming up for this next few weeks, so keep an eye out. Man, it's January. I'm tired. Everyone's tired. This month sucks, doesn't it? So get thunky, drink some beer, and see you in the tank.
Attention humans, this is a Thunk Tank. Please insert this podcast directly into your nearest orifice for viewing pleasure.
Okay, you ready? Oh shit.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Come into our Thunk Tank.
Luke, don't switch to the other peanuts.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Come in the tank. We're thinking, and we're drinking,
And we're thunked.
Oh my god, I'm probably more beer than man if we go far enough back at this point.
Alright, cool. We should be good to go.
I like the boop part.
I sure hope we should be good to go. I'm in no...
Give into this movie review episode. Do it.
Yes,
Do it.
to the dark side of profiteering off of
The dark side comes with many things some would consider unnatural.
Like Rise of Skywalker.
Like making...
But Mr. Mouse has ordained it.
So
Do it.
Do
it.
I watched a review of it on YouTube, and it was a video that it was brilliant. It just started with like this big intro about the Rise of Skywalker, and then it said like review, and then it just showed him for like 5 seconds just staring at the camera like with a depressed look. Like, you know, it's like,
Yeah,
I can't believe I have to do this level. Like,
yeah, that's about how I felt with it. Although it does give me hope for the upcoming sequel, the Palpatine Palpitations. Who did he plow?
I mean, why not? If it's just about just making whatever so that you can make money off of it, why not make a spin-off series called Palpatine's Palpitations?
Yeah, and it's just the love story of like apparently who he was banging.
Who are all those people on
This cast can be summed up by this one line.
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Because that's where I'm coming from this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do even have to get into like the whole fact of if you go into, I guess we do, about the canon lore and how it just tears it all to shreds more so than any of these other movies.
Our criticisms of this film doesn't make sense if we don't.
I know, it's just there's so the
All right,
one thing I'll
let's set
say
it up.
is
We're,
that
we're talking about episode 9, right?
yeah, and the one thing I'll say to sort of, I guess, start the conversation is the fact that looking at the 9 main Skywalker Saga movies as an entity, I guess at this point, I contest that episode 9 is the worst of the 9, even worse than episodes
Phantom
1
Menace.
and 2.
Yeah.
I would have to concur.
And we can go into all the specifics from there, but I think the prequels in general, as many problems with those that there were, they at least had a relatively consistent progression to
There was an arc
a point
there.
within the lore and the canon, whereas
I think
these
3
movies,
is
in
3
particular
is
9 just
redeemable.
felt like, oh yeah, 3 was actually, I mean, compared to these especially,
Yeah.
I think 3 is ahead of these movies
Yeah.
for sure. And especially 9 just takes a dump on everything that the series was. I feel like
One thing to
overall.
note about 9 is it's still beautiful to look at and experience in the movie theater with the music and on a big screen. Like there's something there.
I mean, so's Jello wiggling on a table.
Right.
No, Jello wiggling on the table is not like going to see Star Wars in the movie theater. Those are different
Episode
activities.
9, maybe. I've seen some wiggly Jellos.
No, I mean,
I didn't. It's the first time I've seen a Star Wars movie in theaters where maybe I'm just getting old, but I walked out and there was no magic. I walked out being like that was.
I also
walked
laughed out loud
feeling
at
more
points.
like a 30-year-old adult where I'm just like,
But
man,
I
things
also-
that used to be
I-
cool are already not cool.
But even
Yeah,
even
that's
like
true.
even the shitty prequels and like I knew episodes 2 and 3 were bad and I was young at the time and it was still just magical to go watch Obi-Wan and Vader fight. Like that was incredible.
But
to
I
get to
also
see more of that.
I didn't like episodes 1 and 2, and I came out of those disappointed. But I came out of 9 disappointed. But I was also laughing in the theater at how bad it was, which I didn't do with 1 and 2.
Me and my
Spider-Man
fiance
3
laughed
comes
at
to
each other
mind.
a few times. Like throughout the movie,
Yeah.
we looked at each other like, "Wait, really? Like Han Solo is just a ghost, but not really a ghost? Really?"
I saw Spider-Man 3.
He's in the next Lego set
with-
now, though.
Of course, that's why he was in
Yeah.
there. But I saw that movie in theaters with like 20 friends. We all went opening night because we loved the first 2 movies, and I was the only one laughing at and getting shushed at by my friends who were still trying to take it seriously. But it was just such a bad movie, and I haven't felt that in a long time. And yeah, it was really disappointing. This Star Wars. Let's start with what didn't make sense about what you were saying. So there's 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. That's how these movies were written, filmed. That's just the history. That's
Which
how Star Wars
I'm
worked out,
totally
right?
okay with as a.
And I'm okay with that as a storytelling device. Just
Yeah, that's
this
fine.
movie was supposed to wrap up nine movies.
Yeah.
That took 50 years to make. And the fact that this is how J.J. Abrams made it, I've ranted many times on the cast. I know he doesn't listen, but I wish he would, just so he could know how much I detest his artistic choices.
He doesn't give a fuck
and
what
what
you
he
think,
does to these canon that
That's the problem.
I consider important, and his lack of stewardship outrages me. And I don't think he has any right to direct these
Well,
films.
it began.
But anyways,
in
that's a whole
sense,
other episode.
it began with 4, 5, 6. It began in a very like deeply storytelling way, and then 1, 2, 3 became a bit empty, and then 7, 8, 9 became maybe better for like 7 and 8 had their good moments, but they were
I agree,
overall
yeah.
bad. But
Right.
they were not bad. Like they were just like not great.
Well, they felt like they were going in whatever directions they were going, and whereas 9 said, all the other movies suck, this movie's awesome. And it's like, not only is it a terrible movie on its own, if you analyze all the problems with the plot progression and the editing and how jumpy it is and fast it is and the writing and the plot holes and everything else, it's awful, but then it's also way more awful in how it just unravels everything that came before it. It logically doesn't make sense.
It doesn't build on. Yeah, it unravels.
It's like a
and
double
tries to
whammy,
replace,
yeah.
but poorly. And let's get it. We have a whole list here, so let's just pick a random one, Joe, off our list to explain to
Yeah,
people.
we came up with a list of 26 things.
So we'll post the list, but number one
we
is
hated about
number
this
one
movie.
is who is Palpatine fucking, and his kids, do they have powers or did it skip a generation? That question alone blows apart the last like 3 movies. Because if he's
Right.
been behind,
if he
spoiler
has a
alerts, obviously,
grandchild,
but
that means like
if
he
he's
had
been
kids,
behind this
what
the
was
whole
their
time-
power? Yeah.
Well, they show his kids for, I don't know, a half a second in this movie.
Maybe.
And they just get shanked by guards. And the question is, so did his insanely awesome Emperor Sith powers skip a generation and
It's
just
like
go
baldness.
to Rey?
Yeah, it's like baldness.
Or his kids,
Yeah, it's like-
or his kids just such douchebags they weren't able to tap into their evilness. They
No,
were
it's
too
J.J.
nice.
Abrams is a shitty writer, and he doesn't give a fuck about
Right.
Star Wars canon or lore. And he liked the Emperor as the bad guy in the original trilogy, I guess. and
Everybody
decided
did. It
to
was
bring him
amazing.
back, even though he died arguably 3 times in that movie in
But
episode
also,
6.
wasn't the weird implication that like he was a Snoke because he was all the
Snoke.
evil voices that Kylo Ren ever dealt with, right? So he was
Yeah,
everyone.
he had test tube Snokes in episode 9. Do you remember that?
No, I mean, did you in Rise of Skywalker? Like, yeah, there were like
Yeah.
there was a weird shot of like a fucking like corpse looking fetus looking
Snokey thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which also that was an issue I had. They could have spent 20 minutes of that movie on the background of Palpatine's shadow, like deep state government and how it survived. And that would have been so much more interesting and explained it, rather than just a quick pan shot of Kylo looking in the room and the Sith workers ignoring him and be like, "Oh, it's a Force user; they're allowed to come and go."
Johnny, that's
not, be like, "Oh, tanks with Snoke, got it."
That's not enough Lego sets. Disney can't sell as many Lego.
They can't sell Lego sets.
Why do you think
that
they
creepy dystopian cloning?
Why do you think they started doing the intermittent star hopping or whatever, light speed hopping,
star jumping? Because
more sets.
That looks good. Yeah,
more sets. You can put it
That's
on
a
more
different
cups.
planet you can
put
jump
it on
to.
more T-shirts. It's like the shaniest
it's so
fucking
clearly
marketed movie.
It's so clearly like the it's being built from not the bottom up as the story tells the writers where to take it, but it's being from the top down where somebody goes, oh, it's sort of like at the end, like the SJW thing came in, like they had to show a scene of like lesbos making
the timestamp. How far did we make it?
There you go.
Hold on, everyone. This is a game.
Yeah.
We made it 9 minutes. Nine minutes and 1 second on the spot.
Yeah.
All right, we almost made it 10 minutes. Go ahead, Luke.
Luke had to come
Before
in
the
with his
left,
agenda.
before the alt left came in and ruined everything. Go on. Let's hear
with
how
his
they did it,
agenda.
Luke.
What I mean is it's just like a small example of how art is about letting the truth emerge from the depths, so to speak. Like, but when you come in from the top down, you go, we need to like include this or that or this. So
what
saying,
SJW message is worth bringing
it's
up
the same
besides
thing.
all the plot holes that you're bringing up?
What I'm saying is the same way that a lot of the Marvel movies just kind of felt awkward as
So no, just mention your SJW point, because I was about to bring up the Marvel movies as an example of Disney doing this correctly. So
Yeah, but that wasn't Disney.
So some Marvel movies are great.
It is
but
now. It wasn't.
Some of them
for most of it.
Some of them
it's always been
succumb
Disney.
to the sort of culture wars more. But I was just, when I was watching it in the theaters at the
What
end of
culture
the
war?
Star Wars movie, I just kind of, that moment hit me as like clearly contrived and like put there for a very specific reason that didn't fit in.
Her
It just
changing
stood
her
out
last
as-
name? What are you talking? What moment are you? I don't know what you're talking.
Luke's talking about. He was very.
I literally don't.
He was
I
very
legitimately
upset
don't know what
and
he's talking about.
felt oppressed by the lesbian kiss.
Oh,
There
was that it?
I'm talking about the lesbian kiss at the end of Star Wars.
Wow, that bothered you.
No, I loved it. What I'm saying is I just noticed it as contrived. It wasn't just like naturally part of the, because like they didn't show any other people
I mean, a
kissing.
male and a female kissing is contrived when they're scripted strangers that are forced
Yeah, but
to
Luke
kiss.
is-
Why
Luke,
not?
I
two
would,
women?
be
let me
the,
ask-
I would be the first
Luke,
to say that. But
Luke,
I
let me
also
ask
happen
you
to
this,
know
though.
why.
But Luke is if in the original
one else
trilogy
kissed.
in Episode 4 when they
It's not a
attack the Death Star, everybody who attacks who's a pilot is white. And the only reason that's the case is because whoever was doing the hiring and whoever was showing up to act, it was just all white people. So
In the 70s,
is
yeah.
that more or less contrived?
Well, I mean, the contrived part, I'm saying like writing it in.
Who said it was written in? It might have just been a director's
quirk
choice.
of casting. Those
It-
are the
it
two
probably
best
didn't say in the
actresses.
screenplay lesbos make out. Like that's not a screen
A charged
note that
kiss
you would put-
between two
Well, then,
rebels. They
this
were the
would be
best
the perfect.
casting.
This would be
for
the
it.
perfect example of the definition of bias. That my mind saw that as contrived, and maybe it was just happenstance. That's what a bias is. But like I've noticed in lots of movies that the sort of woke left culture gets bombarded in an unnatural way into plots and things, especially in like some Marvel movies and just the more popular the movie, the more you'll see like
So
But I think it's hard
The
to say
influence.
define what bombardment is, because the way you using the word bombardment makes it sound as if they won at the end of the movie and then there was like 19 hot chicks just going to town on each other. There was
by bombardment I mean like enough to like break the fabric of the story. In other words, the story is not the thing driving it. It's not like the life force of the story. Instead, you're just like piecing it together. Like we need to have this, and we need to have this.
No, I know. I understand where you're coming from with that, but I feel like the Star Wars example is the least version.
Oh,
of
I
that.
have no idea if that's what it was. That's just how it hit me in the theater. And like I said, that could totally be my bias.
He
of
was
just
triggered.
Be on the lookout for.
His alt-right sentiments were triggered. I understand.
Yeah, but
No,
look,
my
it's
regular
funny-
left compared to alt left is the difference here. Like that's
So
why
I
I'm
would
pissed
say
with
that.
Bernie now. Like I just don't believe in Bernie
Oh,
anymore.
Okay,
Here
well,
he goes.
He's not. He's not. Unless you're talking about Bernie Palpatine, I don't want to hear it.
Bernie's probably the closest of them to Palpatine, actually. As much as I love Bernie. Who do you think, if you had to have...
Just because he's old and white, that's so racist. But
It doesn't mean it's
I
not
was gonna
true.
bring up.
I don't trust
Marvel
Bernie anymore.
compared to Disney, compared to Star Wars, because I think Marvel plays that line perfectly of fan service to the adult hardcore fans, giving them stuff they want to see and interesting stories while making it as sellable and profitable for the kids and the games and the Lego sets as they can.
Oh, as
Marvel
a business
plays that
model, they're
line
for sure successful.
like I'm just saying I'm saying in terms of the balancing we need to make as much money off this as possible versus making these still fun, interesting, like entertaining, good movies. Like the last Avengers Endgame was incredible. Infinity War into Endgame, and it made a lot of stuff they could sell. You could take a kid that's maybe a little too young for the level of violence to it, and they can handle it. But it's also still entertaining for full-grown adults as an action film. And this, like, you would have expected Disney, who could do that with something as, like a comic books, and they could take something as already developed, and like no one knew who Iron Man was before 2008, and they built this whole world around this character. And Star Wars was already done for you with this rabid fan base, and everyone got every Star Wars reference. That's pretty much it's always been in the zeitgeist since the 70s, and they just kind of just boofed it. And this movie did not play that line at all. And because I see it, as I was telling Joe, is J.J. Abrams made Episode 7, the first one. It was an okay movie. Then he was busy or an asshole or whatever he does, because fuck that guy. And they brought Rian Johnson in to do Episode 8, which was a very different movie than J.J. Abrams' Episode 8 would have been. That's not a crazy thing for me
Maybe
to say.
you
Everyone
might
would
even
agree on that.
you might even say better in some ways.
I think so. And then I think personally, when Episode 9 came out, Abrams went, how can I try to force this back into the tracks I wanted the story to go, rather than build off of what the last guy did, so it makes the most sense.
Oh, it
and
for
is the
sure
best
was
story.
like...
He was like, how do I ham fist in back what I wanted the whole time with as least effort as possible?
And we were talking about that
So
the other
that
night.
guy's mission.
That was a big problem with the fact that it jumped around like that, because Episode 7 feels as if it's more so about, in some ways, the more traditional Star Wars sort of mindset of, it's family line, and you're born with this power and all that type of vibe. And then Episode 8 was more about, fuck that. It's all about self-determinism.
Yeah,
and
where are you where you're at now? And
right,
who are
making
you?
your own way.
And that was really cool.
And I like that too. I said, oh, okay, they're going in this direction. And you think going into Episode 9, oh, okay, so the struggle is going to be about that between Rey and Kylo. And then you get to Episode 9, and I was telling Luke this, watch, I've never seen a movie that was ruined so badly within the first 30 seconds, which it is, because when you see the opening crawl, it talks about how Palpatine has returned, and he's been doing all this crazy shit for the last 40 years, and
Just
you
like,
realize
boom,
That should have
axiom
been
of
set
the
up in
story.
the last movie.
yeah, they just axed everything that came before this. Everything.
He was trying to be like, this is what I would have done in the last movie, but since I didn't do it, I'll just throw it in the opening scroll.
And not
Wasn't
that,
which
the
is
whole
not that what that's for.
and not
Star
that it makes
Wars.
sense. Even if he does that, it still
Wasn't the
doesn't
whole
make sense, but he
Snope
didn't.
like Kylo Ren thing that they were the
Well, so
ones
that-
drawing
that
off of the most powerful part of the, like there was with no setup. It just struck me as a slap in the face that said, like, here, you're already going to be in disbelief. Here's more, like,
Yeah.
and take it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like, what's bigger and badder? The Emperor. He was the baddest, so bring him
But
back.
it's also just
Yeah.
because I don't know if it's because of the I am your father twist, or in Return of the Jedi that it's Vader that kills the Emperor, not Luke. Like, you think it's going to be Luke. He's been training for this. Yoda told him, you have to face the Emperor. It's the only way. Like, the prophecy, this and that, and all
Yeah.
that. And it's not. It's like Joe was saying yesterday to me. He's like, that was the whole big reveal in Episode 6, which made it a great movie. and made Luke a more interesting character is it's not his story, it's Vader's story the whole time.
Yeah, it turns out that it's really a story about Darth
and
Vader.
how he defeats the Emperor. And Luke inspires him to do it. And Luke realizes
his
that
internal struggle with being on the good and the dark,
Because that movie ends with Luke's story really beginning. The Empire's destroyed, and now he's the only Jedi, and he has to try to decide what he wants to be in this new world without an Empire in it. And that's the beginning of his story. And then we don't get to see that because it just skips to 7 when he's an old man, and we just see flashbacks.
And then that's done awfully.
But that was what made the original movies really interesting, that twist. Or
that's
the twist
what made that trilogy
Luke was
make
the
sense
son
too,
of Vader. And I just felt like Abrams was like, well, I got to jam some twists in. So I'll just throw Palpatine, or I'll throw whatever. Pick a dumb twist in the movie that he tried to do.
As if you're on stage improving, just let me throw a little Palpatine in.
I mean,
it's all jazz, man. It's
talk about
no.
inconsistency too.
It's writing.
Johnny brought up a great point because first of all, we talked about how, well, if you go back to episode 6 and you want to try to argue, well, one, he should have died when Vader threw him down that fucking tunnel in episode 6, and then he would have died when he exploded after falling down that stupid fucking tunnel, and then he would have died a third time when the Death Star crashed after exploding, so maybe 4 times he died, the Emperor, and he somehow survives. But at the end of episode 6, all Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Ghost Vader, like the very last scene of the original trilogy, see Luke, and Luke smiles at them and they smile back. And if Palpatine had survived, they would have been like, oh, hey, by the way, bro,
doing that.
It's not over.
He's not here yet.
We've talked to you before. We know what's going on. We know what else is going on in the galaxy. We've had these ghost conversations. Maybe we should mention that you didn't quite get the Emperor.
They can appear on different planets at different times. How can they not just make sure the Emperor died? They had one job after their death.
So that's my
to make sure the Emperor died.
That's my argument.
And they just he's got it. We're going to wave to him.
If you're a fan of the original trilogy, you can't watch more than the first 30 seconds of episode 9 and objectively really say this makes any amount of sense within the heart of the canon, right?
You just have to be like, oh, all the characters that are involved for this long period just didn't do what they would have done. You just have to just reset the story, and then it's I don't care about it anymore. These are different characters then.
And horrible retconning.
And that's part of the problem, which was a problem that we talked about with Game of Thrones. When you get to, for all of these plot hole reasons and rushing through things and contriving how you get to these points rather than actual cause and effect and logical consistency, and making sense within this world and within the history of this world. When you get to it, like in Game of Thrones, the end where huge characters die and it's supposed to be very dramatic, you feel nothing. And it's the same thing in the end of episode 9 where these huge characters die. You just feel as if, can we just get on with this? Can we just go through this?
Yeah, what you're saying is if you trust your feeling of your attachment to the characters, it shows how good the writing is.
Yeah, and we were talking about this the other night, how I felt as if Avengers Endgame is a good opposing example to that, because when you get to the end of Endgame, where Tony Stark is going to die before he does, you realize he's going to die, and you realize that he has that choice, though, of whether or not to do that. And it's still, at the same time, not a choice, because if he doesn't do it, he might lose and everybody loses, right?
Well, he knows if Voldemort snaps his fingers, then all the wizards
So the stakes are high and they're real, and again, it builds consistently towards this. And when he dies, you feel really sad about it.
Because Tony Stark is an interesting, consistent character.
Yes.
He doesn't always do the right thing, but when it comes to that hero's choice of to try and sacrifice what you believe, whatever for what you believe in, he always makes that choice.
Yeah.
In the first movie, he tries to kill himself to nuke the aliens, and he survives. He just gets lucky. But he made the self-sacrificing choice that, earlier in that movie, the Captain America said he wouldn't be. He's not the guy to make, and he makes it without hesitation. Then in the second movie, he fucks up and lets robots take over the Earth. But it was coming from that same place, and he managed, and he tries to sacrifice himself in that one to stop it too, and he survives again. And in the third one, also he gets stabbed by Thanos, ready to die to try to stop this guy after he's oh, there's no way I can beat him, but I'm going to keep fighting. So it was an interesting character that every time he made that choice, it was different and it built off the last. So you expect Disney Studios to be able to put together a fucking writing team that can do that with the most treasured franchise that is Star Wars.
I think that's part of why
that's
it's
your
so
job,
disappointing,
and
too.
you show up.
That's your fucking job, man.
Here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that like 5 competent people were in that writing room, and then like 15 other incompetent people were in there, and the 5 people just ended up keeping their mouths shut and not really getting to say their opinions, because like
I do wonder, what that environment was like, because again, if you had showed me that screenplay, much like I said when you watched the first 30 seconds with the opening crawl, I would have said no. Don't, you have to change this. Who was in that? You're right. They must have just kept quiet.
The one that I saw in the theater looked like what should have been like the first draft on like week 1 when they were like, "What's the vibe we're going for?
Let's throw some shit and see if it sticks." Right.
Well, let's just get the visual and like see how it feels, and like run it as a test case. It felt like the first test case you would come up with, not the final product where you're hearing the Star Wars music from the original Star Wars, the thing that makes you feel like a kid inside.
Yeah.
And then the text was just confusedly unnatural. And I remember literally me and Yanka, my fiance, looked at each other at the end of the text and we were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It was so funny.
It was way too much information.
I told her that too. I was like, dude, try to get through the opening crawl without saying to yourself, what?
Yeah. It was so much information that like I read it like twice in like small print as it scrolled away. I was like, I still don't like.
It's such hard turn from where you're going.
Palpatine is just back? Is that like a...
Yeah, and they abandoned so many storylines that they tried to set up in the
Basically, I read all
tried to introduce new ones just to
Not only
wrap
is he
them up.
back, but he constructed a fleet of thousands of Death Star Star Destroyers. Why do you need to do anything? Just send those out. You don't fuck Rey and Kylo.
And this
you
is
don't need them.
You don't
have
need them.
thousands of Death Stars.
What about that
Just
stadium?
Send them out.
The stadium full of chanting hooded people.
Who are
Like,
they?
give
Who
each
are
one
they?
a lightsaber and they'll beat Rey and Kylo. Like, why is it one guy
lightning
on a
bolt-
spider rig?
You can lightning bolt.
What was that?
You can lightning bolt strike down the entire fleet of the galaxy against you. You don't need anybody else.
Which, by the way, apparently
gotta prove your
Chewie
point while you
gathered
do it, Joe.
100,000 planes in like an hour.
Yeah, Chewie's got some pull though. If Chewie called you, you'd show up.
That was
right?
one of the things we
Well,
wrote.
Chewie's the kind of cat that like if he called me into battle, I'm there. It's kind of like this Viking show I'm watching.
All right,
like,
so let's
know.
just go through the list. Let's go through
I
our
guess so,
list
yeah.
of problems we have.
The Lord hath summoned
Because
me.
number 8 is the ships thing. So we made a list of like 26 problems with this
All right,
movie.
rapid fire.
So
I'm
we
gonna-
went over the first one. Who was Palpatine fucking, right?
Yeah.
Number 2, Vader doesn't actually balance the Force if Palpatine lived the whole time. The whole prophecy from
talked about
episodes
that,
1
yeah.
through 6,
Yeah.
Joe covered it. It undoes it. He was supposed to bring balance to the Force. He slowed it down a little, and then Rey did it. So that why spend 6 movies on that if it's not true?
Yeah, next.
Number 3, Palpatine dies 3 times. You mentioned the explosion,
Maybe
the
4,
blue
yeah,
explosion,
right.
and the death. Yeah, Kylo Cuck was number 4, which
You
we'll
just
come
hate
back.
him.
We'll circle back to that.
I have some things to say about that.
Yeah, and a
Yeah,
lot of
exactly.
people. One of the things I've seen is he was his character Adam Driver was the saving grace like of the movie because he's such a great actor. Whatever character issues, we'll get back to that.
I have some things about Adam too.
Number 5 was Dyads. What the fuck? Jesus, Force, Heal, and Resurrection. Which, like, okay,
yeah.
you're going to introduce this thing. They're a dyad magically linked in the Force. Okay, but you already said Snoke was the one making them talk to each other in the first one, and she heals someone not in a dyad with her. So
Well, also-
she heals the
Johnny,
animal. So it's not a.
Johnny,
So what
Just
makes it
sit
special?
back and watch the movie like it's cool. Like look at it, it's cool.
But also that was another problem, that she just suddenly had these magic healing powers. Where did that come from? Because part of
it came from the
struggle.
Mandalorian.
Oh, so
Really?
number 11 on the
But
list.
you're supposed to have to train to get dope powers to get
Oh, but
awesome
Nah,
Joe,
she
powers.
just got it. She
in
got
the
it.
Mandalorian, they showed the Baby Yoda character do that healing.
God damn it!
Yeah, we haven't seen it.
Well, spoiler
This is an
alert.
episode 9 one. Mandalorian cast will come after I'm done outraged over this. But so the 100,000 ships thing that Joe was talking about, yeah, you have 100,000 Star Destroyers you secretly have been building somehow.
Yeah,
Why
just-
was episode 7 all about Star Killer Base, which was a giant planet version of a
Right.
Death Star, which when it blew up, you lost all this,
Also-
Chewie and John Boyega blew it up. Finn, they blew it up with some explosives. And it's like, really? Why would you? If you had 100,000, why did you also build a planet-sized one if you were able to make a ship-sized one?
Yeah.
Why is
Or
it
were
so
you able
hard
to build that
find,
many
too?
ship-sized ones in 2 years from the last movie? Because why wouldn't you take another 2 years and have 200,000? There's so many problems with the math on that.
Why is that place so hard to find too?
Yeah, wouldn't a Force Ghost
It's
know?
in
Oh
the
yeah, we know where the
outer
Sith
rim.
planet is.
Like,
When the
what are-
1,000
if you're a
Jedi
Force
spirits
Ghost,
are talking,
like-
wouldn't one of them have been there? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I got taken there, tortured, and killed to the Sith planet. It's over here. Thanks,
somebody
buddy.
would be able to talk in like the ghost waiting room of the Force or whatever, however it works. But like if they can appear in the sky and look at Rey at the end, if Han Solo can be a ghost without actually being a ghost and all that,
He's a
shit,
better ghost because he looks real.
I think it was just Kylo Ren lost his mind. That was a psychotic break more than a Force Ghost thing, right?
I agree.
He was
but
manifesting that Han the way Luke was like projecting
Manifest
himself.
destiny,
to me,
Because if you looked in the last movie, Luke projects himself for the final battle, his ghost version, when he fights Kylo before he Force Ghosts. That version of him has darker hair. It is like a little less fat than the version on the island.
Really?
He looks a little better, yeah. And so, okay, maybe the ghost Han that Kylo was
You're right, he
talking
does,
to was
yeah.
a version of himself, of his dad he made. But still, like that, like the Kylo's losing his mind in that scene. Then I feel like they made it way too wholesome. And also, that's another thing on our list. He throws his lightsaber away and then immediately needs it. He has to go kill all his buddies, and he doesn't have a sword on him.
yeah.
Also, he killed billions of people, but Rey's like, let's make out. What's that about?
So
I'd do it.
yeah, there's so much there.
Make out with Adam Driver?
No, the other one.
Yo, like so. For example,
Snoke?
Do it.
for example, like
Outrage. Apoplectic, Lair.
I totally get the whole idea of like, and they did this well with Darth Vader in the originals, like the whole idea that no matter how far gone someone is, it doesn't mean they're irredeemable. Like that's a really good theme to play with because even people that are Darth Vader like can like randomly somehow choose good. Fine, I'm cool with that. I did not believe that whole story with Kylo Ren. I kind of felt like his version wasn't complex like Darth Vader. It was more like a child trying to deal with their emotions or something.
That's why one of my favorite pieces of dialogue in that series was when Snoke calls him out for being a child. I love that.
It was great, yeah.
That was one of the few pieces
Take
of
that
dialogue
ridiculous thing off.
where
That's a
where
great
I thought,
scene,
oh, cool, this is going in maybe a more real direction where they're calling out how stupid his character is. That's kind of something, at least.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of respect the 8th movie way more than 9, which just is an inconsistent pile of shit.
I mean, I enjoy 8 now.
But
Way,
I enjoy
way
way more,
more
yeah.
knowing what
'Cause of
9
what
was.
it-
Like I always
what it
enjoyed
coulda
8,
led
but
to,
like
yeah.
I respect at least 8 is like a coherent movie.
I just have one more issue with Kylo, which was like the way his death scene, like Rey forgives him and they make out and then he dies.
Why'd they
And it
make
was-
out? What was that?
That's what part of what bothered me, because I feel like that was Joe saying like, oh, what was good in Return of the Jedi that Abrams wanted to bring back? Emperor being the bad guy, like the bad guy turning good before and then dies at the end. Like he ripped off a lot of stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the forgiveness scene between Luke and Vader was so different because Vader finally redeemed himself and it was too late. He's dying now.
Right.
And so
Right.
so like Luke's compassion in that scene is like I didn't even have a chance to really like we didn't have a chance at all like to forgive you and to move on and for you to like all you had was that immediate moment to do the right thing and now you're gone. Whereas with like I don't know, with Rey and Kylo, he just kind of kills the Emperor, and it's like, let's make out, and I'm dead. It was
Well,
just different.
that's funny,
it didn't
too,
have
because
that same.
Johnny,
go
it was
back-
the shell of it. It was a shell.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
If you go back to
Yeah.
the scene where Vader dies, you're right. The scene with Rey and Kylo is just they make out and then he dies.
Luke's
whatever.
still trying to take him on the
Whereas
ship, and Vader's like, no, you have to leave me. This is it.
Well, Vader says, "Yeah, you have to leave me, and I want to see you with my own eyes for once,"
Yeah,
which
I'm
is very
calling.
metaphorical. I want to see you with my own eyes. He's saying his real soul. He wants to
Yeah.
actually bond in that way.
without
and his
the
last
mask
words
of
are
Darth Vader.
right,
Literally,
exactly
and
the mask,
figuratively.
which was the evil mask, and his last words are, "You were right." And that's what they had been
Because
arguing.
you were right about me. You were right.
They had been arguing. He's like, I see good in you, Father. You're never too far gone. Even after all the horrible things you've done, you can still do what's right.
It's
and
never too
Vader's
late
last
to
words
begin
That was
again.
two movies set that up.
Yeah, and his
Empire
last
Strikes
words
Back
are
and Return
you
of
were
the Jedi.
right, you were right. And that's his peace. That's his solace, was that his son was right. He can die in peace now. This is so much more deep and layered than the fucking I'm getting mad now at
Well,
fucking
Joe,
episode 9.
two things.
Jesus
Not only
Christ,
is that
it was so shittily
is
written.
that concept like really fucking deep, but they arrived there, right? You like
yes,
in a
exactly. There's a vehicle to get you there. It builds up, like Johnny said, over
Whereas
the course of
in
those
Rise
really
of
those two
Skywalker,
movies.
where do you arrive? You basically arrive with a character
No.
that you don't feel that attached to,
Oh, you arrive where I tell you, bitch.
saying
Like-
that she's a Skywalker, and we see the same sunset, sunrise, whatever. Like, fine, I get that. We're burying like two lightsabers and the
Which
one
the
she
sand can
has.
apparently
That was
eat
so
now.
dumb that the sand and they're like, I guess I
sand
just
decided.
I trust the sand. He seems like a good guy. I'll let him decide when the sabers need
the
to
sand
go
just
where.
eats the lightsabers.
It's like, isn't it
willingly.
super corrosive out there in the sand?
When has
Like,
that
the-
happened on Tatooine?
Also, the
There's
fact
no
that
safer
the
place
fact
to store those.
they're trying to Disneyfy lightsabers and make them like magic wands, and that's not a lightsaber is connected to
Well,
the
Johnny,
Jedi
the
who
market
made
research
it.
says that Harry Potter fake wands sold way better than
They
fake
sell
lightsabers.
way better. No, the custom lightsabers you can get in Disney
Can
now
you get
are
ones that
amazing.
are lights,
You
or
build
are they
your
still
own.
plastic?
No, you can pay like $500 or $200, whatever it is, and you go to the Disney Village and a lightsaber smith, and you like they build it in front of you, and it's
Does it
like
run
a
off of
movie
a crystal?
grade replica. What?
Does it run off of a crystal?
Yeah, but it looks metal and stuff. Like it looks really nice. It's one of those good quality.
Does it
ones
use
you get.
plasma?
But you get to walk around Disney with it for the rest of your trip. So that's another reason people buy it. They don't
Yeah.
let you bring them into the park, but once you buy it, you get to carry it around with
Wait,
you.
how do they
So
decide
every
what color
time
the
people
light's
visit,
gonna
every
be?
year they just get a different lightsaber. What?
How do they
Sorry,
decide
what?
what color the light of the lightsaber is going to be?
They have all colors. You get to choose. You can do purple.
But I thought
gold,
the crystal
you have to
chooses
use
after
your
it like
anger.
feels your personality.
No, that's not how lightsabers work. It's the
Yeah, I
Kyber
thought that
crystal.
when with the Kyber crystal, when it's bonding with the Jedi who made it, the
you don't
color
make
gets,
the crystal. You have to find the
no.
crystal.
Who
You have
makes
to
the
go get
lightsaber?
crystal.
Like they get the crystal, they make it into a
Yeah.
lightsaber, and then this is something from a book. I think this is this review I was watching.
Well, this is probably Legends. So Star Wars is divided into Legends and canon. When Disney got it, they took a bunch of the books and things that had been authorized by Lucasfilms and Arts that was kind of confusing and some of it contradictory. And they said none of that's canon. Just this is the original series and the shows that Disney had produced, the cartoon shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we're going to build off of those, and that's the new canon. That's why they can. And they did that purposely so that they can make lightsabers more like magic wands and bullshit like that because it fits more with Disney branding overall and having little kids run around with them because they're magic.
right.
But you're right though. What you're talking about is the legend side of Star Wars.
Speaking of little kids, the whole movie basically felt like it was made for little kids, not for adults.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and it felt like a little kid movie where they tried to throw in as much like rip off stuff from the episode 6 so the parents can be like, oh,
So
I
they're
kinda remember
placated.
that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like when you watch a cartoon show and there's adult jokes hidden.
Hidden.
It's
to be
that
like,
version
oh,
of that. Because
thanks.
I
Yeah.
actually saw episode 9 with my friends who have 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they fucking
I heard the
loved
5-year-old
it.
passed out though, fell asleep.
Yeah, but he loved whatever he remembers
Yes,
from it.
okay.
You know, because-
Visually, it was a good
yeah,
movie.
It
Sure.
sounded great. It was cool. There were flashing lights. There was drama in that sense, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And both of them, the 8-year-old and the 5-year-old, blown away. Fantastic.
Well, let's hit this list up a little bit more.
Are we done? How long?
No, there's a few more things on the list. So yeah, also that was an interesting thing I thought they did in episode 8. To go back to that movie was first of all they're slowly getting chased by the enemy ships. That bothered me. That was the whole plot of the movie. They were like slowly running out of fuel and they could just stay out of range, but
Okay,
they
yeah.
couldn't. And when they turned the one ship around and threw it into the fleet and it blew everyone up, like why not do that with each ship that you were about to lose?
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's been an option.
Why isn't that
this whole
just a
time?
setting instead of like
Yeah.
a self-destruct? Or when you eject from your ship and then the computer makes it do that. Turn around and
Why not just
hyperdrive
make
into the
missiles do
fleet.
that?
Like, why not do that? Yeah. But anyways, that aside, the idea that they're running away and Leia's like, oh, we'll call out to the other, and that was when the before the Republic planet had been destroyed, or it had just been destroyed.
Also, if you were to do that at light speed, I'm pretty sure everything would explode.
Yeah. They just got lucky. I think that's why they're like, oh, that's why you don't do it all the time, because it normally would destroy both fleets. They just got lucky it only destroyed the enemies.
Yeah, because they talk about it in episode 9.
They mention it quickly to kind of just be like, oh, no, we can't do that again. That we got lucky that time.
Yeah.
But anyways, so they were like, oh, our allies will come to help, and literally not a single ship shows up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that sucks. And they just have to run away. And then in this one, they try the same thing, and then literally every ship shows up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense because, like, why would it just Palpatine's gonna come out to give the divided empire? He's been running the empire secretly for like 60 years at this point, from the Republic days through the empire, through the fake fall of the empire and its re-rise, and he's gonna fuck it up now and let a populist revolt overthrow him. And that's the other problem is the Emperor is supposed to be this genius through the first 6 movies, right? And he failed by underestimating his Padawan and overestimating Luke, thinking Luke had more capacity for evil and that Vader was more cowed than he thought, and that. You know what I mean? That pride turned on him. Vader was able to kill him.
That's why it's beautiful, because Luke was willing to die to prove his point. Like, it was a game of chicken, essentially.
It was. And Palpatine assumed Vader was self-interested. He had done so much awful stuff for self-preservation, he would let him kill his son in front of him.
Yeah.
And he was wrong at that time. But so that time he also had numerical superiority in a naval engagement in space, right?
By far.
The whole thing is quite operational.
He still has 30,000 Star Destroyers.
He did that whole thing, and I'm saying in episode 6 in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But then he pins it all on whether or not, I'm not really paying attention to that or what's going on in Endor. Instead of sending an extra battalion to secure the thing, I'm going to deal with this family bullshit with the Skywalkers. Yeah. And it turns on him, and then he's like, oh, it's been 30 years. I'm going to try that same plan where I have a fleet that can beat an enemy fleet, but I'm going to really I'm going to pick that exact moment to try to force some Force user to do something they don't want to do.
But it's not even that he has a fleet that could beat the enemy fleet. He has a fleet
beat everybody
of thousands of Death Star destroyers.
Whoa, hold on. I wrote it down.
Just send those out. Just blow up all the planets.
There's Star Destroyer. Shitty movie tactic where like the evil guy waits for the perfect timing so that his OCD evilness can be executed perfectly.
We were just going over that. And this is one of the numbers of the issues on the list, Luke, and I didn't even put a question mark or anything. It's just Secret Sith Death Star Destroyer Factory Planet.
Yeah, I think that sums it up.
That was a thing that they didn't even explain.
But you can't just you can't just make that a thing in the first 10 seconds without any explanation.
Well, and it's so cheap because the whole premise with the Death Star, it gets into this very realistically sort of parallel question when you think about arms races and stuff where, we have this super weapon, should we use it? And in the hands of an evil empire, the answer is yes. And that becomes an important socio-political question, whereas in episode 9, they say, well, what's better than a Death Star or a Death Star planet? Well, how about if we just make the Star Destroyers all Death Stars? That's the next level up, man. And you sound
really as kids arguing Lego rules.
Yeah, you sound like an asshole because you are one. Because you just said, well, how can we combine the two coolest things to make a cooler thing without it making logical sense other than those are things that already exist, so we put them together.
Doesn't it come down to this idea, Joe? It's like you're telling a story, and whether you're consuming that story through a book or like a movie theater, you don't want to constantly have to step outside of the story and be like, what the fuck is this? You want to just be engrossed in it because you're so consumed by the details that you're believing it as you analyze it. Like, if you're in a good movie, you're just in the movie.
Yeah.
You don't stop and go, wait, what?
It's funny you say that because that actually reminds me a lot of one of the main rules in teaching writing, which is that you want your audience, and this is true in nonfiction as well as fiction, whether you're writing academic essays or stories, creative stories, You want the reader or the audience to be asking the right questions. You don't want them to be asking questions of, wait a minute, what does the sentence mean?
Things
or how
you overlooked.
Why'd you jump to this? Or why is this transition topic, sentence, or story plot-wise going here? You want them to be asking thematic questions of, ooh, like, what is this really commentary on?
If this
How
character is
going
not
to
sure
build?
whether they're going to choose good or bad,
right?
and you want that to
them
be
to ask
that
the right
unsure
questions,
like quality, then that's fine. But if it's
That's
just because you
ideal,
didn't think about it, that's just bad writing.
It's bad writing, and that's the key difference. So it's interesting how you can think of it that way, is that it comes down to what types of questions are you going to have your audience think throughout the production, whether, again, it's a movie or a piece of writing. And there's good answers to what those questions will be, and there's really bad answers to what those questions will be. And in the case of episode 9, it's questions of, what the fuck? What do you mean this is... What, and it reminds me actually. There's that great video of the South Park creators where they give a lecture on how to write stories, and I've seen this with other great writers. They essentially talk about the same thing, where you never want to have a story where you can essentially break down the plot by this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens next, and then this happens next. If you analyze the plot, you want to be able to say, well, because this happens, it causes this. It's cause and effect, which creates ripples, which those characters with their profiles interacting with those ripples then work together. It's much more of a tapestry of cause and effect. And it feels more real because that's how life works.
Well, because that's how you
cool
analyze your own life. You realize, I did this and it caused this. I didn't do this and it caused this.
And that's why Game of Thrones, especially early on, was so great, because there were consequences oftentimes for people who did seemingly the right things, but again, they didn't have all the information, or even though it was the righteous thing to do, it wasn't the prudent thing to do, right? This is what happens to Ned Stark, where if it's a shitty fantasy story, Ned Stark gets away, right?
Yeah.
He finds a way out to fight another day.
He gets out.
Because he's morally just. But guess what? He did the right thing. When he's up on the executioner stand, he takes the bullet. He says, yeah, I'm guilty. I tried to overthrow the king. I'll accept imprisonment for life at the wall, because he knows this will save my daughter. That's the right thing to do at the time.
And it'll prevent a war.
But guess what? Yes, it will prevent a war. But guess what? There's wild card factors in the world. And one of them is Joffrey, who just says, off with his head. And because you made it to that position, you were doomed. And sometimes that's life, right? No matter what
The
you
old
do.
wild card factors.
There's things outside of your control, and it's scary because that's real.
Well, so what's so terrifying about that? And yeah, you're right. Good stories remind us of this fact, right? That even if you live the perfect life, if you're the kind of person that, never drinks, never smokes, exercises all the time, eats like a kale milkshake, not milkshake, but kale shake, whatever, for breakfast.
Yeah, you get hit by a bus, right?
Kale milk.
You get hit by a bus, or guess what? They get cancer, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you cannot protect yourself against randomness. You can set yourself up to have the best possibility. So you start checking your blood pressure when you're at a young age, so you don't find out when you're 50 that for 20 years you've had crazy high blood pressure. You find out when you're 30 so that you can do something about it. Like,
well, you can build a fort, but if guess what, a wormhole opens up and a nuclear strike comes down upon you.
Good luck
with your fort.
This is like the themes that like Star Wars at its deepest is playing with, is sort of there's the being the hero, and that really does work, but sometimes it doesn't because randomness overpowers that. Like
it's a factor.
Random bad luck of life.
Yeah, whereas episode 9, everything that happens is just to get to the next
Well, it just
point.
felt contrived, right?
Very, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, all of a sudden Rey has cool healing powers. Oh,
They thought of it like, can we edit this together, as opposed to, will a subjective mind naturally cohere to this? Like it's not cohesive to my just like sitting there in the theater trying to like have fun with the story. It just doesn't follow. I just felt awkward. Like I was watching a bunch of scenes stitched together.
Exactly. It's so inconsistent. Another point that we mentioned was how the first scene that you see Rey in that movie, she's hovering and just making a bunch of rocks awesomely float without touching each other around her. And then she sort of does a cool, super floaty flip. And apparently she has those powers to fly, essentially.
Right.
And then later on, she falls in some sand and can't get out. What is sand made of? Tiny rocks.
Because like you said...
What the fuck are you talking about? You can't use that insane power now?
But it's like you were saying, Joe.
It's not convenient to the plot of where we need
because,
to get to next.
Because
Fuck
if
that
it
movie.
was actually building off of what would happen, you'd be like, oh, Rey has gotten stronger in the Force. She can do more things. That's going to affect stuff. And it's no. There's the scene where Luke's training and hovering, so we have to have that again, right?
Yeah, right.
And then there's the scene where they have to like lose control for a minute. So that has to it's very storyboard driven.
Yeah, they never zoomed back out
it seems like.
and thought, like, does this cohere? Does this make sense?
Yeah, it's
like,
which is kind of ironic because in that sense there is a formula to it, right? Where they're trying to hit these points of, oh yeah, this is what worked previously or whatever. But again, you to do that, you're just stitching together scenes that in this case it's not cohesive or certainly not coherent, right?
I mean, it certainly is not convincing.
Okay, should we say anything that we liked about this movie, though?
I have something that I liked.
Yeah, I always feel bad just shitting on movies as egregious as this one is.
So musically, at the very end of the movie, they brought back the Luke Leia
Johnny's
theme,
done.
which doesn't get used often at all. The Leia theme, da 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 da.
It's Rise of Skywalker. They're the two Skywalkers, so yeah, it makes sense.
That theme gets used all the time, just like Yoda's theme. Like there are themes that could just get brought back all the time. But the Luke Leia theme, I don't think has been used since Return of the Jedi, and it was brought back at the end. It's a much more complex theme. Like the horn is kind of like in the high register. Like that was cool.
I love how that's like the strongest analysis you can possibly give. Yeah, it was like cool.
Well, I just thought like somebody.
No, you're right. I
Somebody
agree.
cool thought we should use this theme that like because it just felt
Well,
like
that's-
at least someone's cool opinion made it through to the end.
Well, that's a good point too, because that's kind of a sad irony of it, and that's also how I felt about the last season of Game of Thrones, where honestly the music I thought was fantastic. Like it was a soundtrack that felt weird because it was for a way better show than the show turned out to be.
Well, like that piano, the how they chose to do that like very empty sounding piano for the Night King.
Yes.
That really worked. It was empty sounding.
And if the show had been written as well as the music was, it would have been an awesome season.
Instead, it was like,
final
wait,
season.
so Bran, you've just been like in a wheelchair hanging out for a while,
Playing with birds.
playing with birds, making wheelchair designs. Like, what the fuck, Bran?
Yeah, the whole thing was just to get a dickless Theon and a fucking iron-balled Arya. That's all their whole chaotic determinist universe was, just for those two things, and for Bran to go, thank you, while they did their thing. That was his whole... He was just like, I have to be the perfect bait.
Yeah.
And Hodor is stuck in a perpetual time loop because of it. It's a terrible story.
Well, that's why it was so funny, too, with that end season, because why does the Night King need to go after Bran? Just take over the world and Bran will starve. He's in a wheelchair.
But he's just... That was like his last mission.
He can't
Well,
go
his
out
last,
and farm.
His last specific objective, besides kill all humans, was to kill the the Three-Eyed Raven. Like, it's just a personal issue.
Why? When was that established?
Because...
Like, this
Yeah,
is what I
that's
mean.
terrible.
These points, it's just...
We should just write an epic trilogy, guys, is what I'm getting at.
I mean, honestly, do you not think that...
Takes a while.
If we had been brought in after episode 8, we couldn't have written a better screenplay?
I know this is insane because we're
Guarantee you we
three
could've.
crazy people on the internet, but yes, I do.
Yeah, but I'm a writer, you're an alcoholic, and he's an idiot. So
Yeah.
we could have done it.
I've watched a lot of Star Wars.
Why did a heart just come up on
thanks,
the chat?
Luke.
Oh man,
Luke's sending us
Luke's,
happy
Luke's
emojis.
playing with the
Okay, now it just got
Skype chat.
really racial and inappropriate, everyone.
Dude,
All right,
that is not okay.
Might as well wrap
Wow.
up the episode.
I mean, your
Yeah.
camera froze on me. That's why I'm trying to play with it.
Okay, I think that's a sign that we should. Wrap
I think
it up,
that's
though.
it. We've
We've been going for 6 hours now.
no, we're at an hour. Yeah, we can wrap this up.
Okay, well, Movie
Oh, there you
sucked.
go. You're
Let's like you said, Luke said something nice about it. Joe, we should try to say
back. Yeah,
something
say something nice.
Because
Okay.
you and I haven't said anything nice about this movie.
I think what I liked about the movie is that it confirmed to me that the series is dead, and I don't need to watch any more of their movies, and I don't plan to.
That makes you-
on that same morbid note, yeah, I could say it was good in the terms of closure that I don't feel the need for more Star Wars.
No, I honestly don't, because if it was just shitty
movies like
I
that.
might keep going to see shitty Star Wars movies, but honestly, like, no joke, it was that bad that I have zero interest in seeing any more Star Wars movies.
You're right. The next one I'm watching on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. I'm not going to a theater. I'm
No,
not spending
definitely not.
Not spending $15 to see the next version of this.
The next trilogy, especially, I really don't.
I mean,
think
maybe
I'll
that
see it.
Obi-Wan movie, but I think that's going to be a series anyways. I can watch it
So
on my couch.
funny story. Like
And I'm not going to watch any of their original nonsense.
Yeah.
I saw it on Monday night. Like,
That's
so
not a good
tonight
thing, we
is
said.
what, Saturday?
No, we should try again.
I saw it like 5 days ago, and my fiance was so pissed by the end of it that I wanted to sit through all the credits and just like hear the music through, because like I was like, at least
I left.
I'm
Yeah.
here and like in the
She's
great
like, "Let's go.
great
We're
speakers,"
going.
and she really wanted to go. And like, granted, like, you know, it was like 12:45 at night, and you know, in the morning. And whatever, but I was like,
God.
this movie pissed
Faster,
me off.
more,
I just want
more.
to hear like a concert level like audio for the orchestral playing. And she was just like, I need to get out of this theater. I'm so pissed. And I was like, well, I'm going to sit here. And she was like, well, I'm going. I'm like, well, I have the keys. And then like, then this was all happening like in the theater.
Oh, I'll say one thing.
That's
I
my
liked.
memory of Star Wars now.
Yeah, we're still trying to come up with something nice to say.
Was
I'll
that
say
the
something
nice
I
thing?
liked.
Did I say
It
something?
ties-
ties,
almost
it
it.
ties back to our previous episode, which I guess might be before this. And if it's not, you should listen to it. It's all about waterfalls and how waterfalls work. It's very historic, very scientific, very interesting.
Oh, well,
And
this is
there-
more of our drunker episode. That one was that was a serious episode. I feel like we really got
very
into
serious
like
episode.
waterfalls.
But there
and,
were
like, what
waterfalls
they mean
in
and how they
We're
work.
taking this
episode-
one way more seriously. Which
There
probably
were
isn't.
waterfalls in episode 9 in the Death Star. In the ruins of the Death Star, there were waterfalls.
Oh God, yeah, we didn't cover this yet.
I actually liked that. I thought that was cool.
Wait, how the dagger lined up with them?
No, that I didn't think was cool.
Listen, Luke, if you're
But
going
I
to
like the
murder
Death
some-
Star ruins.
if you're going to murder somebody because someone
I thought
paid
they
you,
looked cool.
aren't you going to make the weapon you murdered with them have a cryptic clue on it to the site that leads back to the history of the murder and where? Not only that, but where the guy who paid you to murder him, where he hangs out with his secret Star Destroyer army. You're going to want to include all of that on the murder weapon. So
Why
if
am I
someone
gonna do
finds
that?
it, they know where to stand in
If
a
you're in
random
episode
spot.
9.
They know where to stand in a random spot on the beach. Hold up the murder weapon and be like, oh, yeah, that's where the guy who paid me to murder the person with this weapon lives. Good thing I put it down in the weapon so I could find him in case I ever forgot.
You literally
What?
have a 1 in a gajillion chance.
That was
of
such
lining
bad
that up.
little kid treasure map bullshit to make
Yeah.
it into a
If you
script.
were 3 feet
it was
over,
insane. That
you'd
part
say,
really
"Oh,
upset
it doesn't
me.
line up. I guess we'll go home.
Like,
that's
how'd
it.
she know to be standing right there? Oh, I got the force fields. Let me hold up this murder weapon.
Force powers,
That's a
bro.
map.
Bro, do you
What?
use force power?
Who does that with murder weapons?
Also, I think-
nobody ever once.
For that,
Outside
the
of
way they
this one
portrayed
example.
that sea in between the cliff they were on and getting to that Death Star remnants, they portrayed it like as a mix between the Harry Potter movie 6, like Harry's with Dumbledore like mission, and the interstellar like giant gravity ocean. Like they just kind of like mixed those two like scenes together.
Yeah.
I just felt like, wait, why are there waves? Like, why is that a thing? Like.
Those aren't mountains. They're
Like,
waves.
Well, why did they make that a challenge? And then she just like crossed it,
All right.
and they didn't show how she managed that. Like, it was just like an unnecessary action detail. Like, okay, there are waves, and like it was a struggle to cross it, but like, how did she specifically like do that?
Force powers, bro.
Also, how many times is Finn going to be like, I'll be the guy who dies here, and then he doesn't die and he survives, and everyone's like, great
Also,
job, Finn.
what was Finn's
3
character
times, 4
development?
times? How
Whatever
many is enough?
happened to him? He didn't grow in any kind of way. He just kind
No,
of
he did the same thing all 3 movies.
Yeah, like what was he? He was just the same. Like he was just like
Yeah.
dynamic. I mean, not dynamic. He was just like
He got less interesting in
Static.
the third one. At least in the second one, he's conflicted about staying or abandoning
Yeah, he doesn't really
the movement.
do
In
or
the third
say
one,
anything
he's
in the third one,
worse.
does he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He never
All right,
has
I'm
like a
done.
novel
Yeah, I'm
idea.
done. I got nothing. That's it. I got nothing. I was trying to come up with something positive to say. Luke's hair looked big. That's what I got.
That's such an always said. Your hair is big.
His hair looked very big. That's all I got in
Yeah,
terms of
pretty much.
positive praise. But I just want to end. If there's one thing that people take away from this cast is I think J.J. Abrams is a piece of shit. I'm sure he's a great guy, but as far as artistically, huge piece of shit.
And
I'll tell him that if I ever meet him.
I should
I think you suck. Thanks for ruining
I
Star
should
Trek.
disclaimer too that I'm not
course.
a literary hater. Like as somebody who fails constantly at doing creative work, I really feel for people who write stuff and
Who suck at it.
well, no, I mean people who just try, like that's their job. I mean, you feel bad shitting on a movie like this in a certain way because there's so many thousands of people involved in costume and editing and acting, and a lot of those people are very competent and do a fantastic job and really pour their heart and soul into it, but it's doomed because of the diarrhea writing of J.J. Abrams. And I feel bad for those people because it's not their fault that this sort of was destroyed. You know, have you seen that interview or piece with the actor who plays Jar Jar Binks? It came out a few years ago where he talks about how he almost jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge to kill himself because of all the fucking hate that he got from episode 1. And
That's
he
dark.
talks
Jesus.
well, he talks about how, you know, he before the movie came out was expecting, this is it. This is my career. I've made it. And because from his perspective, just doing the scenes and acting, he said it. I put everything I had into that, and I felt like I did the best job possible, right? And he probably did within the framework that he was put in, right? So in that sense, I feel, I feel sort of bad for all the other people who sort of are.
How do you know it was J.J. Abrams specifically that was the representing of the bad in this?
I do because of
Isn't he the guy who was running that show?
Yeah, he's the main
Theoretically,
director guy, but also because of what he did to Star Trek.
Oh yeah,
what he did Lost was such a cool concept, and how that show ended up, it was horrible.
Yeah,
it was the sitcom version of clickbait before clickbait existed.
Yeah, Lost. That's a great way to put it.
And
yeah.
Cloverfield too. Like the payoff is never there. He's a lot of fluff and hype with and as a Star Trek fan, he admitted. I need to get the exact quote for every time I bash him. There's a quote where he's like, "Yeah, I never really got Star Trek. I was never that big of a Trekkie. That's kind of why I accepted it. So I thought it would make me get more into it. And then Star Wars came along, and I just jumped ship.
What a
shit
thing to say.
Yeah, and it's like there's a certain with stuff that's so obsessed, like fans are so obsessed with, there's a certain stewardship you should feel to it. Like Peter Jackson had that with Lord of the Rings. He was like, this isn't my vision. I'm bringing Tolkien's vision to life. And that's why the fans love his version. He did a great job of it. Whereas Abrams is like, nah, I'm going to do... Abrams seems very much like I'm going to do my version. Let me throw some lens flares. I'm going to reinvent the wheel here. It's like you're not some brilliant genius Renaissance guy. Like,
well, it's
just do the movie.
It's funny.
We should do that.
We should do an episode on Lord of the Rings because I actually disagree with that. That I think Peter Jackson did his version of Lord of the Rings, but he did it pretty good. He did it pretty well. He did it way better than J.J. Abrams did with Star Trek and Star Wars, which I think is interesting to actually look at and assess because I don't agree with everything that Peter Jackson did in the original trilogy, but I think he did a lot well. There's a lot that I don't think he did well or could have done better, but I think it's still a massive accomplishment what he did, and he did a lot of it really well. There's a lot that I love about those movies, but you can then compare that to The Hobbit, which is also a steaming pile of shit.
Yeah.
So that would be a fun comparison.
I was just talking about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but that's something else we can compare. I'm just saying his track record of how he treats like fan material, like. I don't know the term. Not fan material,
Peter Jackson has respect
the way
for
he
it.
treats a
Abrams
canon that he really has no claim to offends me personally as a fan who will spend good money to see.
That's a good way to say it.
And I just don't think he's great. And that's
That's a good way to say it. Like he doesn't respect the thing that he should be artistically drawing from it and trying to let it be art.
I'm sure he respects it in his own way, but to me,
I'm sure he lies to himself about what he thinks he like. Because
He must. He has to. Yeah.
If you really contend with like the best of what is the Star Wars stories, you're not going to come out of that and make the decisions that were made for Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like
Right,
the story is going to
exactly.
reveal itself to you. You're not going to write it so much, you know.
Yeah.
And
right.
Well,
this
let's
story
end
had
this,
none of
let's
that.
end this fuck Abrams cast then, because I think I've
is what it
swayed you
became.
guys.
Well,
to my
actually, that's a
side,
great
so.
title for it. Like,
Yes. I've been angry since Star Trek Into Darkness and the many plot holes I've covered before that I won't bring up again. And then the way the third one, because he bailed on that franchise, just ended up being Fast and Furious in space. And then he bailed in the middle of Star Wars, the franchise he cared about, and it made him. I don't know if that's part of why he fucked up the last one so much, but I think it is that Rian Johnson went a different way. He's like, I can't handle that. I have to go back to what I wanted.
Yeah, who
and
knows?
it didn't work.
Or millions of dollars.
Or yeah, maybe it's Disney executives whispering in his ear, ruining everything. But he's just fucked up other stuff, in my opinion.
I
to the
agree.
point where
I agree. Yeah.
I would not hand him any more projects to do.
I'd hand him a napkin to fold. Maybe that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the last
And even
thing
then,
I'll
I'm a
say
little
is
cautious.
this doesn't even exist in a vacuum. We're in a period where like stupid movies are often being touted as like really great, and it's like a confused like moment in the culture where like people
'cause the
say
media
things are good
companies
even
own-
if they're not.
The media companies making the movies own the companies making the reviews and stuff.
Exactly,
And,
yeah.
And the publicist companies pushing this stuff. So yeah, of course there's like a weird promotion of
Yeah,
stuff.
but guess what? The Rise of Skywalker probably has already made $1 billion. Or
It's
some
like
shit.
the third
Oh,
most
well over that, yeah.
profitable movie ever.
So it's a
Or
great
whatever.
movie, right?
Well, if that's
On
what they were
paper.
going for, that's what they got. But like again,
Uh-huh.
that's not art.
We
That's
got our
something
pay,
else.
bitch.
Mongol Empire is great on paper. Not very sustainable.
Ooh, let's do an episode on that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right, coming up next, episode on Mongols.
Episode 10, The Mongol.
We try to stay on track for a few episodes straight, guys, as you can tell.
No, I think we're good. Yeah, I'm gonna hit stop, Johnny.
All right.
All right,
Thank you
asshole.
for listening.
I mean,
We'd like
okay.
to know what you think about episode 9.
You
So
owning Steam.
tweet at us on
On
what's
Twitter.
our Twitter?
On our Twitter.
At Thunktankers, or comment on our what's our website? Thunktankpodcast.com.
Or send
yeah.
Luke some nudes. He loves those.
He does love those.
He loves nudes.
He said they're delicious, right?
All kinds.
That was his words. Yeah.
Tremendous nudes.
And we got the frog suit, so don't forget about that. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Thunk Tank podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to help us out, please consider leaving a rating or a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with people you think might like it. And if you really want to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/thunktankpodcast. We have links to this in the episode description and other places. And for as little as $1 an episode, you can help us keep the lights on. And you also get access to a very special Drunk Tank feed of episodes. So every few episodes, we'll have a few more beers and record an extra 20 to 30 minutes of extra thunky, silly whateverness. So there's a separate RSS link you can get from there, and if you put that into a podcast player, you'll get your own separate feed of only the Drunk Tanks. I think we have about 6 or 7 of them out already, and more to come. Thanks for listening, and stay funky.